Enrichment, Enlightenment, Transformation. Rabbi Yisroel Cotlar, the spiritual leader of Chabad of Cary, North Carolina, guides anyone who has been searching for a meaningful life and conscious living. Join our discussions about the mundane, our daily activities, and then infuse every day with a spiritual twist from the inspired sages of the Talmud and Jewish mysticism, which many call Kabbalah. We learn from the root source of all religious monotheistic traditions and delve into the symbolism and levels of meaning from biblical stories.
Good morning, everyone, and a very happy Chanukah to those tuning in, wherever you are, all over the world. And if you are tuning in to our live stream, please enter in the chat box your name. Feel free to ask questions. It makes it so much more meaningful when we know that we are studying Torah with people all over the world. And to those here in the room, here in Cary, we're having a lesson today about Chanukah, and we're on page 140. Let me begin with the question around the room. Where is Chanukah first mentioned in Jewish tradition? At what point in Torah literature does Chanukah enter the scene? Obviously, it's not going to be in the 5 books of Moses, right? It didn't happen. Is it in Tanakh? That's the next question. No.
It's in the Catholic Bible.
Okay, so there's a book of the Maccabees. There's a book of the Maccabees that actually didn't make the cut. It was when they made the canon, and they decided which 24 books of the Tanakh were written with prophecy, spiritual intuition, considered holy. It didn't make the cut. In other words, maybe someone wrote it, maybe there's some historical facts that are there, but it wasn't written in a state of prophecy. It wasn't a holy book. It might have useful information, and yes, some of the information there we do take in consideration in the story. It's not one of our holy books. Okay? So that's, yeah.
I respectfully disagree from a mystical viewpoint.
Go for it.
It starts off on the 25th word of Torah, because the holiday is from the 25th of Keslev, and the 25th word of Torah is or, light, and then it goes on in verse, I believe, 4 and 5, that darkness, and God brought light out of the darkness, and as we light it, and brings light. Then the last section, you have the first 2 letters of Chanukah, the Ket and the Nun.
Yes.
In the same verse as you have the Nun and the Ket, which is Noah, and it's that God brought light, grace, favor to Noah.
So Hal is absolutely correct. I stand corrected here. And if 2 people here could share a book, which would allow Elizabeth to have a book in the back, that'll be great. So Hal is correct. There are allusions to Chanukah in the Bible. Okay? Isn't that Chanukah is the 25th day of the month of Kislev, and the 25th letter of the Torah is God said, let there be light. That's incredible. But that wouldn't be, that's an illusion. That not an illusion as in a it alludes to the story of Chanukah. Okay. Where is the first mention? We said the book of Maccabees is not part of the Torah. So that's his history again. So there's historical records of Chanukah. So even within Talmud, okay, is there a tractate?
Well, no.
And let me ask you, our Daf Yomi, is there a tractate Chanukah? Not bad. There is no tractate. There are 63 tractates in the Mishnah, all right? And just to give you, let's talk about history for a moment. Chanukah happened 2,100 years ago, okay? A few hundred years afterwards, the oral tradition is first written down called the Mishnah. My fault. The Mishnah. The only time in the Mishnah Chanukah is mentioned is what Elizabeth alluded to. You know what it talks about? What happens in the laws of damages if you have a camel and the camel has flax on it, okay? And as the camel is walking by a store, the camel's load enters the store. There's no light bulbs in those days. What did every store have? a candle, and engulfs it, it lights the store on fire, who is obligated? All right, that's the question in the Talmud. And who do you think the answer is? The camel owner. Why see his load entering the store? He should have stayed on the road. Then it says, what happens, however, if the candle was outside the store? Then who's obligated? The store owner is. Unless it's a Chanukah light. Because if it's a Chanukah light, then they had permission. It was expected that that candle should be out, and in which case the store owner is not obligated. And it's so funny, that is the only mention of Chanukah. Oh, so in the Mishnah itself, and that was what I was saying, in the Mishnah itself, which is the first generation of oral tradition being written down, that's the only mention. Fast forward a couple hundred years. Now, after the Mishnah is what's called the Gemara. Okay, that is when all the debate in the Talmud happened. There are pages and pages about Chanukah. And you're right, Elizabeth, that story gets introduced with Shabbat candles. It discusses Shabbat candles. And then it mentions this kind of candle is good for Shabbat. Is it good for Chanukah? And then there's 3 pages about Chanukah. But there is no tractate Chanukah. Unlike, let's say, Purim, where there is a book of the Bible and a tractate dedicated to it. Now, that doesn't mean to say they didn't observe Chanukah. They did. And the proof is that later on in the Gemara, okay, it records the way they celebrated Hanukkah shortly after it happened. But for some reason, it wasn't written in the Mishnah. And yeah, Marty.
Okay, the whole thing about Hanukkah, it looks like it's 100 years after. It looks like the rabbi was saying, well, we celebrate it, but why? You look at the tractate. And look at the book of Maccabees. It looks like that they couldn't celebrate Sukkot that year, and that's why Hanukkah the first year was 8 days, because...
I'm not even familiar with that, not observing Sukkot that year.
Yeah, well, that's...
Well, what says in Maccabees we take with a grain of salt,
right.
you know.
Okay.
But what we'll say in a moment is, and we have a famous argument, we'll have it in a moment, whether you light the menorah. Levi, do you mind hitting the AC? It's a little cold. Just turn off the AC, please. Right here. Do you light the menorah 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? That's the famous debate. That debate happened between whom? Hillel and Shammai. When did they live? Within the century after the Hanukkah story. Okay. So they definitely observed Hanukkah back then. For some reason, it's not mentioned in the actual Mishnah. There's a lot of theories why that might be so. Are we interested? Yes, no? We are? We are interested why it might not be mentioned. The reason given by some scholars for a period of time was the Maccabees, okay, were actually from what family? They were Levites. They were from the Levites and the high priest family. They also became the political rulers of the time. Generally speaking, the political rulers were supposed to be from whom? King David's family. Now, at that time, you know, in a situation where there's no one to step in, they stepped in, that was okay. But as soon as there was peace and tranquility in the land, they were supposed to yield the leadership back over to the rightful family, which was Judah. They didn't. I mean, who would? If you're in power, do you want to give it over to someone? They did not. And it ended up not lasting long, as we discussed last week. Within a few generations, the whole Maccabee family kind of went away. There are opinions that say that as a result of that, the author of the person who wrote down the entire Mishnah, his name was Rabbi Yehuda, who was from the tribe of Yehuda, still had grievances about that, therefore did not write it down. And that was an opinion many, many scholars accepted for a while. The Rebbe, however, rejected that, and he said it would be very petty of someone like Rabbi Yehuda, who wrote down the Mishnah, and it seemed to be this tremendous holy individual to school. Come on, you're not going to put their names in the book because of that. Yeah. The Rebbe gave another suggestion. Any ideas why there wouldn't be a tractate Chanukah? What do you think? The Maccabees themselves? No, that as they went on. As time went on, but the story was a story. Why should what happened a few hundred years later go back on that? What the Rebbe suggested is something very interesting. What we know is the oral tradition was really not supposed to be written down. It was only written down as a result of what? Yeah, and people forgetting, and even when it was written out at the beginning, it didn't say, for instance, you have to say Shema every day. It says, what time do you say Shema? It took for granted that people know to say Shema, but they were worried about what details people would forget. They didn't write down the things that were obvious because they wanted to write down the minimal at that time. Well, Chanukah was fresh in people's minds. So the Rebbe proposes maybe there was no need to record it at that time because it would be like us recording the events of the 1967 war in Israel, which is 50 years later. This is all a little. So that is the answer that the Rebbe puts forth. Yeah.
Does it have anything to do with the infighting among the Jews? No, that was very, very bad. We're celebrating. I know we're celebrating the light and the miracle, but together with that goes.
Well, that was 100 years later. The Maccabee victory happened, and it was good for a while. Then the infighting started. Okay? But you are correct. I'm going to discuss this a little more tonight as we have a Farbrengen for my birthday. But because of the infighting and because the military victory was not eternal, it only lasted a period of time, that might be one of the reasons why we place a great emphasis not on the military victory, but rather the miracle of the oil. Because the spiritual victory lasts. We'll discuss that a little bit more later on. Okay, let's go in our books now. And let's do page 140, where Chanukah is mentioned not in the Mishnah, this is in the Gemara, in the Talmud. Tractate Shabbat, as you said, Elizabeth, the discussion began with lighting Shabbat candles. And Pam, why don't you begin?
Our rabbis taught the mitzvah of Chanukah demands one light for a man in his household. Those that beautify the mitzvah kindle a light for each member of the household. And concerning those that beautify more than that, Beit Shammai says on the first day light 8, and after that gradually reduce. But Beit Hillel says on the first day one is lit, and thereafter they're progressively increased. Ula said in
Let's stop there for a moment. This comes as a surprise to many people around the table. When the Chanukah observance was first instituted, how many candles do you light every night? Well, at the beginning, one light for a household. That's the beginning. Just light one candle. Now, you want to do it better. Some people did, you know what? How many people are in the household? Me and my wife and my kid. I'm lighting 3 candles. Then, if you want to really do it well, what should you do? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, according to Beit Hillel. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, according to Shammai. Actually, I should say Bet Shammai, Bet Hillel, which means the academies of Shammai and Hillel. As I said, they lived within 100 years of the miracle of Chanukah. There are over 300 disagreements between the academies of Shammai and Hillel in the Talmud. However, there are only 3 disagreements between Hillel and Shammai themselves. It's always their yeshivas, it's their academies.
Wow.
So it was that their teachers gave certain principles, and their students interpreted those principles and applied it to other situations, and that's when it became 300 arguments. Many people don't know this. There are only 3 arguments between Shammai and Hillel themselves.
You're going to keep secrets.
What?
And you're going to keep them secret.
Oh, those 3? No. Maybe one of our rabbinic scholars know. I don't even know.
I bet one of them is sending out one question.
Oh, you're right. Well, I told my my rabbinic guests that we have a very scholarly crowd over here. So. But this is very interesting that this is the one mitzvah that no one even knows about the first and second way of doing it. Everyone does it the best way. But what you should know is if you're ever on the road and you only have one candle, still light it, because that was the original tradition. What else is interesting is about one per person in the house. In any event, we're not going to. But so that's Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel. The question is, what is the reason for Bet Shammai and Hillel? And on that, we're going to have 2 opinions. Pam, continue.
Ula said, in Israel, 2 scholars, Rabbi Yossi, the son of Avin, and Rabbi Yossi, the son of Zebida, argued. One maintains the reason of Bet Shammai is that it should correspond to the days still to come, and the reason of Bet Hillel is that it should correspond to the days that have already passed. But other scholar maintains Beit Shammai's reason is that it should correspond to the bull's offering of Sukkot.
I'll explain that in a moment.
Beit Hillel's reason is that we increase in matters of sanctity, but never decrease.
So in classic Talmudic style. We can't just have one reason for the argument. We got to give two reasons for the argument. One reason says, Bet Shammai says, how many days are left? Beit Hillel, how many days have we already done? Let's stop there for a moment. I get Bet Hillel. I get that. It makes sense. We're on the first day, we're on the second day, we're on the third day. What does Bet Shammai say it's how many days are left? What's the logic in that? Well, it's very we're going to give a deeper meaning to that today, like a mystical reason. I've always struggled with the simplistic reason. Why would someone light Chanukah candles based on how many days are left?
The only reason would be you're building up to the end as a finale. But that's not the case in this all.
Right, it's one. Wow. If the miracle of the oil, again, is that the one candle lasted 8 days, and I should add, there are many ways of understanding what that miracle is, but let's just say for the sake of argument, that they poured in the entire thing the first day, and it went down an eighth every single day, then you're right. Bet Shammai's way, right? Everyone understand what I mean? The oil went down, instead of one day it went down, every day went down an eighth. So, in a sense, the first day we light all of it, because that's how much oil was left, and as the days go on, we light one candle left. That's good. I like that.
We're talking about candles rather than oil. So some people are using oil.
We're good. Tonight we're gonna this is where we're stopping the Talmud. Tonight we have a men's class. We're gonna do more. A men's club. We're gonna do a little bit more of the Talmud. We're gonna go further where it discusses the best kind of oil to use, candles, that discussion. All right. Good. Bet Hillel, how many days have passed? Bet Shammai, how many are coming? The second reason says, Bet Hillel says we always go up in holiness, we don't go down. Increase in holiness. And by the way, that's a biblical rule. A biblical rule is like once you start doing something good, you're not supposed to stop it anymore. Or, interestingly enough, once something has been used for a certain degree of holiness, you shouldn't downgrade its degree afterwards. So, if there's laws about if a certain site is used as a place you study Torah, can you later transform it into a synagogue or not? And then can you turn it into a classroom? And there's different degrees of holiness even for what a thing is used for. If you have a box that's used as an ark, can you later use it to hold Jewish books? There's a discussion about items increasing in holiness. It's a biblical principle. It's actually learned from a story much later in the Torah, where a not good guy, Korach, has a rebellion against Moses, and they burn a bunch of incense, and in the process, what happens? They get swallowed in an earthquake. But right after the story, it says the pots that they were used for a holy purpose. You can't discard them. So what do they do with them? What do they do with Korach's frying pan? They burned it down, and they made a covering for the altar with it. Because it should be going up in holiness, not down. Okay, that is the reason for Bet Hillel. Bet Shammai, however, says the bull offerings on Sukkot. What? What's that? Look in the Torah, talks about how many bulls should be offered every single day as a sacrifice on the holiday of Sukkot. Funny how you mentioned the Sukkot connection a moment ago. And if you look in the Torah, it actually goes 13 on day 1, then 12, then 11, then 10, 9, and 8. So then 7, it stops at 7. So Bet Shammai says, there's a biblical precedence for going down every night, so to Chanukah we should go down. Now, I'm sure everyone in the room is puzzled by that. Like, what's the correlation? Why? Just because you found one example of the Bible in which you go down, therefore Chanukah should go down as well? Wouldn't you say that there has to be some deeper correlation between Sukkot and Chanukah that Bet Shammai even makes this comparison? It seems very random. Very similar. Okay. Yeah, all of them were lit in every night. There was no Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. They were all 7 were lit every. But this was the argument, up or down. Hillel up, Shammai down. Why? One reason is days that passed versus days that are yet to come. And the second reason is going up in holiness versus the offerings of Sukkot. The question is why? What would be the reason for Bet Shammai? And it's important to know that in Jewish law, who do we go according to? Who? Hillel. And that is why the menorah that we light is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. However, we still study the opinions even when the halacha is not accordant with them, because there's truth to it. It may not be that that truth is what it was determined by halacha, but there's still a truth to it. One is just the ultimate truth. So that is what we have to get into tonight. Why would Shammai say what he does? Okay. Let us continue. Next piece in the Talmud. Bill, do you want to read? Text 2. This is how the Talmud then continues, page 141.
Rabbi Cotlar, the 25th day is different against the days of Hanukkah, which are 8. One may not eulogize the past. When the Greeks entered the temple, they contaminated all of the oil in the sanctuary. In the kingdom of the house of
the Chashmonaim
prevailed. They searched and found only one flask of oil that was placed and sealed with the seal of the high priest. And there was only enough to light for one day. The miracle occurred, and they lived with it for 8 days. The next day, they established these days as holidays with Hallel and praising God.
Okay. That is the way the story is summed up in the Talmud. Notice, which miracle does it emphasize here? The oil. It sort of just like passes over the whole military victory. Oh, by the way, when the kingdom of the house of the Shemaim prevailed, weren't you outnumbered? So you see even over here how it...
There might be a political reason for that.
Correct.
Jews were not in their own country. They were under rules of some sort of rebellion and a military victory, and touted that. That might not be so cool with the
very good. That is suggested as well, and therefore focus on something that would not be at odds with the powers of good. Very, very interesting. And here it does say that the very next year they established these days as holidays. So it was the very next year where they already begun, and that is when the Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel argument began. I want to, because of time, I want to paraphrase this next text, text 3. It's a very fascinating one. And what it says is, what does it mean the next year they established it? And this is from the Tanzer Rebbe. It's a very interesting idea. What determines, there were a lot of cool things that happened in the Bible where we had military victories. What determined whether or not that should be an eternal holiday or not? Think of all the other times where an enemy tried to overcome us. Or else we had holidays, unfortunately. Well, fortunately, every day. Then again, we could also have reasons for mourning on a lot of days as well. So it's a very fascinating text, and what he writes over here is a Jewish holiday. Doesn't only commemorate, but we're actually reliving on a spiritual dimension that which took place. And we've discussed this before. Passover is not just a time where we remember the Exodus, but we recharge on what? Freedom. It's a spiritual gift that is available that day. Shavuot, every single year, what do? We re-accept the Torah. That's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to experience that, not just remember it. So not every holiday did the sages feel they had the power to say that, and spiritually that same gift was available every single year. The next year came around. The next year came around, they said, you know what? We see that same energy that was around last year, we can tap into in a spiritual way. That is the spiritual meaning of why the next year they made it a holiday. Okay. How do we understand, however, Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel? Going up or going down? So I'm going to give a spiritual explanation for that today. Chanukah was a time when the world was very, very dark. Judaism was really at the brink of extinction. It really, really was. In the sense that had the Hellenists won, Judaism as we know it would not be around today. And the truth is, no Judaism would be around. We would probably have just assimilated and become Hellenists. So it was a dark time. They wanted to stamp out God and Judaism. The question is, how does one attack darkness? Okay, and what I'm going to discuss now is on a psychological dimension. We all have those issues that we have to overcome. We all have those shortcomings inside of us, bad habits, in a negative place, addictions, God forbid, things that we need help on. And people can find themselves in a spiritually dark place. The question becomes, what is the best way to get out of that? Okay. In Psalms, King David writes, there's sur mirah and aseh tov. There is departing from bad, and there's doing good. Okay? You can play defense, and you can play offense in sports. Okay? When you are trying to overcome your personal darkness, what is the best way to go about doing it? Is it to battle that specific issue that needs help? Get to the core of it? Or is it, let's just start doing a lot of mitzvahs?
That's interesting, because psychology, that's behavioral psychology, versus psychoanalysis. It's basically the same thing. Behavior is you just do it. Psychoanalysis, you got to get to the reason and the core.
Beautiful. So we have Freud. Freud says there's something lurking deep inside.
Your mother.
Your mother. It's your mother. That's what it is.
Right, that's the
And you have to sit through many sessions of therapy and really see what is at the root of it. And only then and only then will you be able to get past it. Otherwise, you will always be what's called in Talmudic law the short, long way. What's the short, long way? I'm going to skip around the text for a moment. Go to text 7. Levi, why don't you read?
Rabbi Yisroel the son of Hananiah remarked, no one has ever had better meat except a woman, a little boy, and a little girl. So he doesn't discuss the woman and the little girl, but what's the incident with the little boy?
Does later the Talmud discuss the other two or not?
Not at this, I don't think that's
Okay, continue.
Yeah. What was the incident with the little boy? I was once on a journey when I noticed a little boy sitting at a crossroads. By what road do we get to the town? I asked him. This one, he replied. This one is short but long, and that one is long but short. I proceeded along the short but long road. When I approached the town, I discovered it was closed in by gardens and orchards. Turning back, I said to him, my son, did you not tell me that this road was short? And he replied, did I not also tell you but it's long? Kissed me upon his head and said, great are you, Israel, you are all wise, both young and old.
So the long short would have been better in the sense that, yes, it's more mileage, but when you get there, you're there. You know, sort of when you use Waze versus a GPS, what the short is time. The long short, the short long, you never really get there. So one opinion, which was more of a Freudian perspective, was unless you can really uncover the demons, unless you can really see what was at the root of it, that is the way to be able to overcome your personal darkness. Then you have more, I think, more modern behavioral. Is that more?
behavior was 20th century.
All right. Who's that attributed to? Skinner?
Yeah.
Skinner?
Young.
And the idea is we're very influenced by what we do. We're very influenced by, do you have any comments on that, Dan?
No.
Oh. We're very influenced by what we do, and we can shape our insides by our outsides. And when we start behaving in a certain way and laying down a certain pattern, that can be contagious, and that can really affect us entirely. And just like last week, where we were discussing the Chanukah story, and I connected it somehow to the Parsha, I'm going to do the same this week, where we have these two approaches. How do we go about doing it? Do we go about first we have to get to the root of the problem, or do we just increase in good? Logically, it makes sense. I would think that you got to get rid of the schmutz first, because you don't build a palace before you don't bring in the furniture and the chandeliers before you sweep, right? First you sweep, right, have walls. First you got to sweep, then you can decorate. But then we're saying, no, maybe you can decorate and the sweeping will happen automatically. So what is the biblical precedent for this? Mystically, a story in a few weeks. Joseph has two kids. Joseph, when he comes down to Egypt, has two kids. Those two kids are influential because up until today, Many people who have the tradition Friday night of blessing their sons, they bless their sons. You should be like Joseph's two sons. You don't say Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You say you bless your sons to be like Manasseh and Ephraim. Those are the names of the two boys. Why did each have their name? Hal, text 4. No. I know you could do that, but getting ahead.
And Yosef named the first one
Manasseh.
for God has caused me to forget all my toil and all that's transpired in my father's house. And the second one he named Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction.
So Joseph had a rough life, right? He had 20 years of health, right? Hard life. Finally, he reaches the top. And he has 2 kids. And the first was?
Are you teaching the women with salvation?
So prior to the giving of the Torah, okay, there is no formal conversion. I mean, who did Moshe marry? Who did Isaac marry? Anyone that sort of joined the clan and adopted the family traditions were essentially Jewish. But yeah, it is interesting. Correct. There is a midrash about her identity. I don't want to do that. You're probably familiar with? Okay, after class. Interesting.
Did he have just 2 boys? Or
Yeah, that's it. He had 2 other children. That's it.
So he had no girls?
No, he did not.
So there's a thing that you're supposed to have a boy and a girl.
So correct.
Yeah.
Ideally. But not everyone's able to. But what are their 2 names? The first one is, God made me forget all my tzarah. All my troubles I've pushed away. Thank God. He had years of being thrown into a pit and being sold as a slave and being in jail. Now that I've reached the top, I have forgotten. I have moved past. I have cleaned up that area of my life. And what's the second child called? Ephraim. The word in Hebrew is peri, pri. Pri means fruit. God has made me fruitful. God has made my life beautiful. The first one is getting rid of the bad. The second one is being beautiful. Which child was born first? Which child was born first? Menashe. Correct. And logically it makes sense that first you get rid of the bad, and then you become fruitful. And then we're going very fast today because of time, this perplexing story in the Bible, where Joseph brings his 2 sons to be blessed by his father Jacob. And Joseph gives Manasseh on the right side to get the blessing with the right hand. He's the older. And Ephraim, who's the younger, on the left side. And what does Jacob do? He crosses his hands. And you would think, Ribono Shel Olam, God Almighty, after everything that has already happened with your children, right? With the whole story of Joseph and favoring this and the stories throughout Genesis, you would expect the last thing to do at this juncture in history would be to start favoring one child over the other. I mean, God Almighty, why? And Yosef corrects his father and says, maybe you're not seeing correctly. This one should be on the right. This one should be on his left. And Dad says, I know what I'm doing, son. I know what I'm doing. I guess the miracle of the story is they didn't fight, they didn't argue. Thank God, right? They didn't hate each other. At least, maybe I always joke, that's why we bless our kids Friday night. Them two, the first 2 siblings that didn't fight in the Torah, right? In any event, but going back to my message, logically it makes sense to do what first? Get rid of the schmutz first. That's the natural order of the progression. Get rid of the schmutz, then be beautiful. Menashe, then Ephraim. Work on the specific areas of character development, then try to add in more light and more mitzvot. And that makes sense. And perhaps in a perfect, ideal world, that would be the road that we would all do if we had enough time, if we had enough energy, if we had enough capabilities. But guess what? We don't. Practically speaking, for most of us, the path of Ephraim, just doing good, focusing on what mitzvot you can do in your life, go that way. If you have time, do some Menashe as well. Don't put off doing good, adding more mitzvot until you deal with Menashe, until you deal with your demons. And so his dad says, the words in the Torah is, look at the way the Rebbe, text 6. Yosef maintains, Tanzer Rebbe, right, that a person must mend his past before doing a lot of good. Yaakov, however, said differently. No, just focus on action. And at the end of the day, Yaakov's path becomes the more acceptable path for most people. For most people. Not to say we don't do Menashe, we should, but we can't push off doing good. The way the Rebbe puts it is beautifully in this letter to someone, text 8, Marty.
There are two general approaches in healing a bodily illness. A, to heal the particular organ or faculty that is defective, sick, or weak. B, to strengthen the healthy organs and faculties so that they may overcome and heal the sick organ or faculty. The parallel illnesses of the soul are the two approaches in service of God, teshuva and good deeds.
Teshuva means you're trying to repair that which was messed up. Good deeds is I'm just trying to repair the whole body. Am I taking, God forbid, a serious drug to cure the illness, or am I just pumping myself up with lots of vitamins?
But waiting around to do good, it's kind of like, I'm going to have a baby when the whole world is great. You'll never get there.
Correct. So I guess that is so back to Menashe. There is still truth to it, because for some people, can an addict just say, you know what, I'm going to ignore the issue, I'm just going to do a lot of good. No, the addict has to confront the issue at some point. So therefore, the approach of Menashe, the approach of Teshuvah is still very much there. But we can't push off doing good until we do that. And that would be Menashe and Ephraim. And those are two different ways of dealing with darkness. And the Rebbe suggests this is one way of learning, going back full circle to Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel, text 9. Brian, why don't you finish?
According to Bet Shammai, first one must remove the evil from your midst. When starting out, the evil is in its full strength and therefore warrants supreme effort and abundant light. As the days progress, the evil decreases and thus less light is needed. Bet Hillel, however, holds that one must enter a canopy of holiness, despite the fact the evil is prevalent inside him. He should begin divine service by doing good things, and one mitzvah leads to another, ascend in holiness, little by little, gaining strength, until the evil is completely eradicated.
Do one mitzvah today, you know what's going to happen tomorrow? You're going to find yourself doing two. You know what's going to happen the third day? You'll get contagious. The good deeds will do it. Bet Shammai, on the other hand, give me 1 second.
Like an alcoholic, you've got to have guts enough Right, that's the big thing. You can always change. You know, but God gives you the light.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, very good. Yasher Koach, everyone. Thank you. Any thoughts, Rav Amnon, from our online community?
No, Cheryl is here, but no comments.
Tell Cheryl a happy Chanukah.
She's hearing you.
Okay. And next week, God willing, back to my laptop starting on time, Rav Amnon. Thank you so much. A happy Chanukah to you.
Happy Hanukkah to you too.
Are you saying you're Dale?
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Health In with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, The Tanya Love Show, Your Healthy Pet with Gisela DiCarlo. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by Atomus.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters for professionals, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.